She went under the wheels.
Perfected.
Welcome to Under the Wheels. I'm Matthew.
I'm Gabe.
And today we have a special guest, our first Under the Wheels guest. His name is Mike, and he actually did the intro music and the outro music to this episode. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
And thus the laughing begins. So today is going to be kind of an interesting, maybe a late episode. We're going to talk about Ford v Ferrari, which we teased in our last episode. Gabe had already seen it. I saw it later that day. And then Mike, I believe you just saw it pretty recently. Is that correct?
Last night.
Oh, okay. So we have the three levels of it's so fresh in Gabe's mind. It's kind of fresh in my mind. And then Mike is like, I'm going to correct you on every point.
Every point.
Well, before we do that, like we always do, Gabe, what have you been watching this week?
Well, I've been rewatching a lot lately. I rewatched American Psycho and Taxi Driver, taking advantage of while they're still on Netflix.
Didn't you just watch Taxi Driver?
Yeah, but I liked it so much, I decided to watch it again.
Wow. All right.
I mean, the other thing is, my girlfriend's a big fan of that type of movie, like very psychologically intense dramas that are character studies of one mentally unstable individual. She really liked The Joker, and based on that, I said, well, you should watch Taxi Driver. So we watched Taxi Driver, and we watched American Psycho. And she really liked both, so...
Oh, good. Kudos.
Yeah, fun times were had by all.
Yeah.
And then, as far as movies I hadn't already seen, I watched Gangs of New York for the first time.
Wow.
Which was interesting because it's shot and edited like a 90s music video. Like there's so much like random slow motion, random fast motion, like smash cuts, whip pans. It felt like some studio exec came up to Martin Scorsese with a bunch of like Nine Inch Nails and Korn music videos on their computer and said, why don't you make it look like this? What if it was the 1800s but it looked like this? And Scorsese was like, yeah, sure, why not?
I'd like to do that for my next picture. I'll make it fast editing, and all the kids like this, right? So we'll do it like the way the kids like it. But I'll also have
We're gonna make
my own
history.
editing.
We're gonna take history and we're gonna make it fun for the kids.
They'll like it. We'll put in boobies, right? Kitties like the boobies.
So yeah, I mean it's a good movie. It's entertaining. Daniel Day-Lewis is great with his weird 1860s New York accent. I like the little bits of Liam Neeson. Like I like a lot of the side characters in the movie, like Liam Neeson and Brendan Gleeson and
I like Brendan Gleeson a lot in the movie.
Yeah, he's great.
Kid from E.T.
Wait, what kid from E.T.?
The kid from E.T. Elliot from E.T. He's in it.
Yeah.
I haven't seen E.T. since I was like 6.
The best friend that introduced, he's like, don't you recognize me? I saved you. That guy with like the scar,
that guy.
who gets
who
gets like murdered and crucified.
He gets impaled on like a fence post.
And then DiCaprio has to like mercy kill him. Yeah, that's the kid from E.T.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fun.
Hey man, he needed to pay the bills too.
I guess, yeah. Fuck. Who's the guy from Terminator who played John Connor?
Which Terminator?
I can never remember his name.
Edward Furlong?
Edward Furlong. Yeah, I feel like he's Edward Furlong, but
not
in
a drug
worse
user.
financial shape.
I don't think so, because he still gets regular work. Like he's got,
really?
Yeah, he's in all of the Mike Flanagan movies. He plays as, according to Austin, he makes a cameo appearance in Doctor Sleep, and he's also in Gerald's Game. He plays the father in the flashbacks.
Oh,
so he's
that's interesting.
Yeah, he's still hanging around, still making money.
Leonardo DiCaprio looks awful with that chin strap.
Damn.
Like every time he showed up on screen with that weird like peach fuzz chin strap on his face, I'm like, what the hell are you doing? I mean, it goes back to an earlier conversation we had on the podcast about how like historical dramas never appropriately show how ugly the time period was. I think the only thing that shows how ugly that time period is DiCaprio's facial hair.
I'll make an argument that there's also like all of the side characters look super grungy and disgusting, and I'm like, yeah,
that's true.
I don't want to be in there. They talk about like cutting the meat. I'm like, why would anyone eat any of the meat Bill is making? It just looks like gross.
They didn't know any better.
I cut this meat with the same blade I cut your father.
Ugh.
There was only one honorable man in all of New York, and I killed him.
I would have cut out both eyes if I could, but I needed one to see him with so I could murder him. I thought for a while I thought that Daniel Day-Lewis actually cut his own eyeball out so he could put a glass eye in there for the role.
I wonder what he did. Like, did he just put like a glass cap in there and tap that, or what?
I think they used the sound effect and he just kind of like motioned for it. But I wonder that myself. Mike, you've seen Gangs of New York, right? We're not.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, all right. I'm like, I feel like we're spoiling an awful lot of this and talking.
No, definitely. It's just been like 10 years since I've seen it. So.
For a while that was my favorite 2000s Scorsese film, just because I love the scope of it, like the old timey boxing and stuff like that.
I like how sweeping it is in its portrayal of New York as a microcosm for the United States.
Yeah,
And like all the shit that goes on at that time, even if it's not totally historically accurate. Like, there were not really any Chinese people in New York in 1860, but it's cool. It adds to the effect of the movie, so it's cool.
yeah, it's a very textured movie.
Yeah, and then the other movie I saw for the first time was I watched Ugetsu, the Kenji Mizoguchi movie.
I haven't seen any Mizoguchi.
I mean, this is the only
Me
one of
neither.
his that I've seen, and it's very
Depressing?
I mean, kind of. It's pretty depressing. I don't know. It's strange. I'm starting to have this opinion with Japanese movies from that time period, where it's like a lot of the very kind of manneristic historical films of like Kurosawa and Mizoguchi, where it's all these like long sweeping shots with a lot of camera movement and very epic historical scope and very like no theater, like over the top stylized acting. I don't think they're that amazing in general. Like, everyone's like, oh, these Kurosawa movies, these Mizoguchi movies, they're so fucking good, they're excellent, they're mind-blowing, and like, they're good, but I don't think there's much to rave about. Especially compared to like, if you realize that like Seijun Suzuki was making movies at the same time, and his movies are awesome. I don't know. I think Western attention is focused on the wrong people.
I know. So I also know, as a brief tangent, Mike, as you couldn't guess, we do a lot of film history talk on this.
Yes.
I know that a big thing was Mizoguchi and Ozu are kind of the two tentpole Japanese directors, and then all of the like hipsters from the 70s got into Kurosawa, and they started trying to bring like the Kurosawa overacting, like faster camera movements instead of just like really patient developing shots of Ozu. And
Yeah.
Right.
and like Tokyo Story, for example, is held as like the like epitome of Japanese cinema. As far as the like over the top Kurosawa movies, which ones are you talking about, Gabe?
I mean, all of the ones that I've seen. So
Oh.
Rashomon, Seven Samurai.
Oh, I love Seven Samurai. It's
Yojimbo.
so good.
What's Yojimbo's sequel again?
Sanjuro.
What else? Ron. The bits and pieces I've seen of Throne of Blood. I mean, those six mainly.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think if there's anything else. But, I mean, yeah, they're all, like, Yojimbo and Sandro are a little more subdued, just because they're less dramatic and they're more comedic. They dip more into the kind of the lighthearted adventure territory and less into the super dramatic and depressing epic scope of Seven Samurai, or kind of that, like, the philosophical overdramaticness of Rashomon, where it's like, what is truth? What is human nature? Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, I mean, like, all those movies I mentioned, they're good. Ugetsu is good, but they're just good.
I disagree with you on 4 of those movies, I think.
I'm sure. You disagree with me on 4 of the Kurosawa movies? Let me guess. You disagree with me on Sanjuro, Seven Samurai, Ron, and Throne of Blood?
Sanjuro, Seven Samurai, Yojimbo, and Ron, because Throne of Blood is kind of boring, especially if you don't have a good translation. So, like, if you pick up the Criterion one, the second translation is significantly better than the first one.
Really?
Yeah. Because I watched them both. I was like, I should watch the second one.
What if they just don't even translate it? They just have, like, the semi-appropriate Shakespeare lines in there?
Yeah.
So if you don't know the play, you're just doubly confused.
I mean, that ending, the ending scene in Throne of Blood is still like it's worth sitting through the whole movie just to see that one scene. But like, but I'm a big fan of Yojimbo because I mean Yojimbo basically is the bedrock of what's his name's career, Sergio Leone's career.
Sergio Leone, yeah. I mean, it's funny because he remade that movie shot for shot.
Yeah, that's why I can't watch. I literally cannot watch A Fistful of Dollars. I like the change that they made where like the guy who the brother who comes back is also the brother who is like, you know, who's like raping that one woman. Like I like that change because it fits the world a little bit better than how it's handled in Yojimbo. But that's really like the only change I like. Everything else I just see it and I'm like, this is exactly the same movie. It's executed extremely well, but they also got sued by Toho, so...
Oh, I'm sure.
Anyway.
Ugetsu's a solid movie, and it's short. It's only like 90 minutes.
That's good.
So, yeah.
What about, have you seen anything else, Gabe, or should we move on to Mike?
It's just that, other than like current movies, but we'll move on.
Mike, what have you been watching recently?
Recently, I've watched The Mandalorian, which is surprisingly good. I didn't like the first few episodes, but
really,
it's definitely picked up.
I actually really liked the first 2 episodes.
Really?
Yeah. I've only seen the first 2.
Okay. I just in the first episode, I felt like not a lot happened, and like
that's why I liked it.
But it felt like the whole 40 minutes could have been condensed to like a 5-minute excerpt of like, here's what happened.
I'll also say that The Mandalorian, Gabe, because you're not watching it. The Mandalorian, the first episode, at least the first half of the episode, The Mandalorian maybe says 5 lines of dialogue. So the show is reliant on a lot of silence. Like they'll have characters who are chatty, but for the most part, it's kind of that when they say it's kind of like a Western, it's kind of like everything is shown and not told. And there are some weird things like in the second episode when he just like randomly assaults a sandcrawler. It's like,
yeah,
it's kind of strange, but like they have these elongated, the closest I would say is it's kind of like a poor man's Samurai Jack.
Yeah.
So that's why
Which
I like
is funny
it.
Because they had the Genndy Tartakovsky Clone Wars show, which is basically just Samurai Jack meets Star Wars.
In 5-minute segments.
But you watch them all together, and it's like an hour and a half, so it's a full movie, and it's awesome.
But, Mike, what do you like about The Mandalorian now? Because I'm guessing you didn't love the pace.
The pacing was just really slow, at least in the first episode, but ever since the end of the second episode, it's really picked up. Have you gotten to the part where the Mandalorian way... like their ideals?
No, I haven't. No, he just left the planet, and he just left the guy who said, "I have spoken," who's played by Nick Nolte.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Excellent voice acting by Nick Nolte.
Yeah, he's good.
But the ideal of the Mandalorian, it just really struck a chord with me for some reason. It's just really interesting how they want to evolve through combat. They don't progress unless they're fighting constantly. And I kind of like that ideal.
I mean, it also has like a lone wolf and cub feel to the show as well.
Yes, definitely. And at least in the timeline that The Mandalorian is set in, Mandalorians are kind of hiding out. Like, they're not trying to be very public with their existence, I guess. And
I don't know. It's nice. Yeah, it's an interesting show, and I've liked the first 2 episodes. I will say, a lot of people say, "Oh, this is a good direction for Star Wars." It still kind of feels like Star Wars fan fiction-y, but I've enjoyed it so far. It's like all the good stuff about Star Wars fanfic.
Yeah,
I've enjoyed it so far.
I definitely see that. That's good. That's good.
I have a question. Do you think there will ever be any new Star Wars content that doesn't feel like Star Wars fanfic at this point?
Oof. That is a tough question.
Because my guess would be, at least for us, and I think for a lot of people, you know, we can only accept like the Star Wars movies we grew up with or that existed before we were born as like, that is Star Wars, and then everything else is like fan stuff or quasi-fan stuff, even if it has the Disney and Star Wars label on it.
So from my perspective, I think that it'll stop feeling like fan fiction when they stop pandering to the fan base. So the fewer heavy winks, the better. And also there's something about like old Star Wars costume design shot with modern cinema landscape that just always kind of rings fan service and fanfic to me. But I mean, I think I watched a fanfic of a Star Wars fan fiction movie, and it's like they got the costumes right for the most part, but the place they shot at looked like LA. Or like a desert mountain in LA. And
Yeah.
The camera movements and everything, like they were all handheld, so the camera kind of looked, they didn't have really any expensive shots, and it just sort of felt like a bunch of people pretending to do Star Wars, which...
I was going to say, that's the thing about the filmmaking in the original trilogy and in the prequels. It's all just lock it down on a tripod and occasionally cart it around on a
dolly.
Yeah. The camera barely moves in those movies.
There's one handheld shot that I can think of in Revenge of the Sith, and that's when Anakin's trying to climb back up, and it's like, it's a great shot, and it still holds up great for being primarily a CG shot. And then, you know, some of the space battle shots in Episode 3, but it's also just a different, like, there's something weird about the way that George Lucas shoots and edits, that he had control of the edit in all of those movies. And so even though, like, we laugh at the prequels because they basically just put a bunch of Windows transitions for every scene, there's still something about like the pace of it that feels, you know, that feels concrete and strong. But anyway, I've talked too much.
I think people forget how many Windows transitions are in the original trilogy.
There are a lot, but they're not as goofy as like the bar transition or the Venetian blinds.
Yeah, but they're like all of those circular wipes and stuff. Like George Lucas loves that shit because freaking Flash Gordon, the Flash Gordon serials used to do it too. So
I always thought he did it because of Kurosawa. Kurosawa always did wipes, and I love, like, if you use wipes well, then they're a good, what's the word? It's a good tool. But if you kind of do it haphazardly, like was kind of in The Force Awakens, where it's kind of like, did J.J. Abrams really understand how to use them? Then it's not as good. And I liked that in Episode 8 they sort of dialed back on wipes every transition, because then when there was a wipe, you felt it.
Well, Episode 8, the filmmaking language is completely alien to Star Wars.
Yeah, there's no Wilhelm scream.
No, well, and it's also just way more stylized than a lot of the classic Star Wars movies are.
It's definitely a Rian Johnson-y type film.
Yeah.
Mike, what do you think? Do you think Star Wars will ever not feel like fanfic?
Once they stop relying on like the old trilogy, maybe, because at least with the new Star Wars films like Episode 7 and 8, it felt very heavily reliant on like the star power the old characters had. So it didn't feel like a standalone Star Wars film to me. But I don't know. I hope for the best.
That's a good point. Although I'm a big fan of 8, so
like, yeah, I was not the biggest fan of 8.
I like the way that they used Luke Skywalker in the movie. I thought, because in Episode 7, all the characters are basically the same as they were in Episode 6. And then in Episode 8, they're like, oh, well, we're just going to take the old, like, bitter sensei trope from anime and we're going to make Luke that. So I like that. So it's like he was the same character, but he felt like a different character. But yeah, we'll find out, because Episode 9 has spoilers character in there, and that's not about fan service at all. So we'll see.
But Episode 9 is going to be interesting.
Episode 9 is going to be interesting. Well, we'll see. I'm going to see it. I'm going to try and see it twice within its release, because I'd see it once to like get all the nostalgia out of me, and then a second time to look at it critically. So.
Okay. I just really hope they pick up the ball where the last guy dropped it on the 8. It was bad.
I still don't think it's bad, but I've gone into this before.
It brought up way too many questions. That's my problem with it.
What way too many questions?
Episode 8.
It asked way too many, or
it brought up too many.
Oh.
It didn't answer nearly as many as I wanted to, and it brought up more questions than I wanted to ask the first time around.
We'll see. J.J. Abrams isn't exactly known for answering questions. So.
Oh, great. All right.
Have you seen anything else, Mike?
I rewatched Drive with Ryan Gosling.
Yeah. I was rewatching that, too.
I just saw it a few days ago, and it holds up. I really like the film. It's just slow. But once you get past the slowness, and you actually appreciate what the music and what the slow-mo shots are trying to convey, it's a really good film.
It's like a movie of two halves. The first half is like the sappy romance part, and then the second half is just brutal action.
Yes.
I love Drive.
That movie's perfect in every way. I don't have a single bad thing to say about it.
I don't either. It's funny, too, because Ryan Gosling is the one who got Nicholas Winding Refn on the movie. Like, I thought it was the other way around, but Ryan Gosling's like, I want to work with this guy.
Well, because Gosling was brought on to do Only God Forgives, and then he was talking to Refn and said, hey, I was put on this project, and I want you to direct it.
Is that how it went down?
Yeah. Oh. Only God Forgives was supposed to come first, and then Gosling roped in Refn to do Drive.
Damn, pretty cool.
I give you 5 minutes. So awesome. The movie's so good.
All right.
Great.
Matt, what have you been watching lately?
Like Mike, I was rewatching Drive and I didn't get a chance to finish it, but I hope to finish that soon. I did see Frozen 2.
Yeah.
All right.
It's got one song that I really love, probably for all the wrong reasons. It's the only, well, I was gonna say it's the only male song, but it's the quote male love interest song. But it's Are either of you going to see it?
No.
Eventually, I'm sure I will.
Okay, so I won't spoil it then. But it was it was fine. It was it was whatever. Oh, and then I saw Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, the Mr. Rogers movie.
Tom Hanks, who does not look, nor sound, nor act like Mr. Rogers, is playing Mr. Rogers.
He's like America's dad, so America's dad is playing America's grandpa.
God. I'll let you get to your opinion of the movie in a sec, but I just want to say that movie indulges in probably the single trope that I hate the most in all of Hollywood filmmaking, which is whenever you have a movie about a strange but interesting person, they're not the main character. The main character is like some boring journalist or something who has to interview them.
Yep.
And then the story's told through their eyes. So it's like we relate to the boring milquetoast, no personality journalist. And we just observe the interesting, cool, historically important person from afar, which is so fucking stupid because the whole point of the movie is to put us in the head of the interesting, cool, historically relevant person. And I'm sick and tired of movies doing this. Gandhi did it. Biko did it. This fucking Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood does it. It's so tired, it's so hacky, and it needs to stop. But what'd you think of the movie?
Well...
You're right. It is exactly like what you said. It's Matthew Rhys is really good in it, and I've liked him in a lot of the things I've seen. He's really good. Chris Cooper is pretty good in it too. He's a little hammy. I mean, you kind of...
Is Chris Cooper the stern father who is responsible for all of privileged college graduate white boy journalists' mental problems that Mr. Rogers has to help him fix?
You minus the stern part.
Oh, he's not even stern.
He flaked on him when he was a kid. At the exact moment that his mother went into critical condition at the hospital.
Okay.
So that's what it is. It's fun seeing. So it kind of feels like a loose partner companion to Saving Mr. Banks, which I really liked Saving Mr. Banks. All of the performances in the movie are really good, and it's based off of the guy's New Yorker article. I think it's New Yorker. So they change all of the names, and they tweak things here and there, and it deals with like sins of the father being passed down to the son, who is going to reflect those sins of the father back onto his child. All of that stuff, and I mean, Tom Hanks is really good, and it's fun to see how they quote made an episode of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood unquote. It was good. It was like a witness. It was solidly done. And it wasn't. There's maybe one part that lingers, but definitely has like a good handful of tearjerker moments in there.
Of course.
So it was fine. It was a witness. It was a witness.
Why did they have to get Tom Hanks, man? Why couldn't it be like literally anyone else?
I mean, who would you get? Like we don't even have
Christian Bale.
Well, because of Terminator.
You know I'm
Salvation.
right.
Everyone will just be making. There's a moment where Mr. Rogers can't assemble a tent, and so he's like struggling to assemble a tent. He goes around to watch what they captured on it, and he's like standing there and staring at it. And if it were Christian Bale, he'd just be like, "Oh, good for you!" And you'd be like, "Maybe they should call someone else."
It's because Christian Bale is an actor, and Tom Hanks just stands around and talks. He plays himself in every goddamn movie. He's not like nothing about what I've seen in the trailers looks or sounds anything like Mr. Rogers. It just sounds like, "Hi, I'm Tom Hanks. I'm Mr. America. Everybody loves me."
It's the same reason why Brian Glazer got Tom Hanks to be in Apollo 13. America wants to see Tom Hanks live. America wants to see Tom Hanks be the good guy.
Ugh,
you know.
screw Tom Hanks. I just can't watch any movie he's in because he just plays Tom Hanks in every movie.
I mean, I think he was pretty good in The Post. He was kind of off character, only a little bit. It was like the raunchier side of Tom Hanks.
Was he folksy and likable?
Not exactly, no, because he was like the hard-nosed editor of the paper who was like, you got to give me more Meryl Streep, and then to his reporters he's like, go out there and pound the pavement. He was constantly challenging to get like the story out, and they're like, oh, but the paper will fail. The paper will fail. I don't care if the paper fails. Let me do my damn job. So.
I mean, yeah. If Daniel Day-Lewis wasn't retired, he'd have made a great Mr. Rogers.
Oh, that would have been good. That would have been perfect.
You need someone who is not going to do, Mr. Folksy Charm bullshit anytime you put him in front of a camera, but you also need someone who's more like effete than Tom Hanks.
I don't know. I think Tom Hanks was a good choice because it's shorthand for the audience. You like Tom Hanks? You're going to like this guy, even if what he does seems a little creepy. Oh, I mean, he puts on the puppet. He's like, waving one of the puppets in front of Matthew Rice's face. He's like, I'm Daniel. Don't you want to talk to me?
That was the thing with Mr. Rogers is he's very...
It's borderline. He's borderline.
He's extremely effeminate, and that... he is, and that's just part of his personality and how he acts and his manner. Like, that's just part of who he is. And Tom Hanks, I don't think he can play that.
I mean, he was in Bosom Buddies, so he might not be able to play that anymore.
Well, Bosom Buddies... saying the Bosom Buddies characters are effeminate are like saying the Monty Python guys play convincing women.
Fair enough. But yeah, that's pretty much all I've been up to lately.
Okay.
All right.
So, Ford v Ferrari, directed by James Mangold. So, Mike, we should go over our rating system.
Okay.
At the very top, if it's an all-time great movie, it would be practically perfect in every way.
Okay.
If it's like a 9 or a 10, like one of the best movies of the year or that you've seen, it is shiny and chrome. If it's good, and you would recommend it to everyone, but maybe not the greatest thing, it's a Witness. If it's sort of in the middle, it's fine. And then below there you get, mediocre, and the last one is just, I don't even know how to describe it, Gabe.
It's so bad that there are no words for it.
It's just Furiosa sitting in a desert, screaming silently.
Well, it's a hell of a rating system.
Thank you. We put a lot of thought into it.
So I guess, who wants to start? Should we start by just giving our ratings to kind of just get them out of the way, or?
Sure.
Okay.
Right. Gabe, do you want to go first?
Yeah. I mean, it's like a low shiny and chrome for me. I thought it was really, really good.
I'll go second so we can let Mike figure out the rating system. It was a Witness for me. I thought it was like, I didn't think they could execute it any better than they executed it, but it was missing something. It was missing some special sauce for me. Yeah, there was something missing from it.
I was hesitant to talk about it during our last podcast because I was afraid that some of my general negativity would bias you against the movie, but I seem to like it more than you did.
It's weird because, but let's get to Mike's rating. What did you think?
Yeah.
I thought it was definitely shiny chrome. It was one of the best movies I've seen all year. I loved everything about it. The cars, the banter between Matt Damon and Christian Bale. I thought it was great.
I agree with all of those points. I mean, I guess where should we start?
So yeah, Matt, let's start with you because Mike and I both seem to really like this. You like it. What parts of it did you not like? Or I guess just give us your more detailed opinion.
That's just it. I think like maybe this is just like with all of James Mangold's movies, but like they all feel like they're 90% of the way there. It's like this movie, it was great. It's got a lot of things that I absolutely love. It actually got me more interested in cars, but it's just missing that last spark. It's an incredibly solid movie. There's nothing in the movie where I'm like, oh, that's outwardly offensive. It hits all of the major beats pretty much perfectly, but it's just missing that extra oomph. It's like if the Lighthouse, like, because again, coming off of watching Lighthouse and Parasite, which are movies that execute perfectly and then bring that extra bit of something to it. Ford v Ferrari kind of felt like that, where it's like, okay, the racing scenes are done incredibly well, but they're missing that extra little something that puts them over the edge. Or like when they dive into the minutia of the racing, it's like, I'm glad that they give you the impression of when you're racing in teams, sometimes the driver will get off the course, recover for a couple of hours and then hop into the course, and they let you infer that. But it would be cool if they had a little bit more, if they delved a little bit more into that section, or showed a bit more about the construction of the car, maybe like in a montage or something like that, in one of those corny like Rocky Balboa style montages where they're like assembling the car bit by bit. It's little things like that. It's like everything was executed pretty flawlessly, but it read the rubric of how to make a great biographical movie and kind of stuck to it and didn't like innovate anything interesting. So that's why it kind of got a solid high witness for me, but nothing to like push it over the edge to a shiny and chrome.
Well, I guess I don't like it that much more than you do, because I give it a low shiny and chrome. But it's the shiny and chrome nonetheless. I mean, I think you touched on some of my opinions of James Mangold generally. But yeah, I mean, I thought like the racing sequences are awesome. I was really entertained and really excited by those, and I wish there was more of them.
Yeah.
Like if I was, some studio hack who could push people around on the set of this movie, I would have said, like if you're gonna make it 2.5 hours, the last hour has to be Le Mans.
Ooh.
Like make all of that racing,
Well, hold on.
Just because it's done so well. All the driving sequences are great in this movie.
Yes. Just quickly. Didn't he have to win 3 races to drive in Le Mans? Because he had to win Daytona, and he had to win one other before then, and they didn't show the other one that he had to win.
No, the other part of the Triple Crown.
Yeah, I would have liked to see that.
Yeah, that would have been cool. Just any way they could have had more racing would have been great. I mean, I love Christian Bale as an actor. I thought he did a great job. I always like hearing him talk with a British accent, because it's weirdly rare. I like his back and forth with Matt Damon, even though I feel like at this point in his career, Matt Damon's starting to phone it in more and more. Like, you watch him in The Bourne Identity, for example, and, like, Matt Damon is Jason Bourne. Like, he is that character. And then you watch him in this, however many years later, and it just feels like I'm watching Matt Damon play Matt Damon playing kind of, sort of Carroll Shelby, or, like, something reminiscent or suggestive of Carroll Shelby. But, he's fine. Matt Damon's always charismatic, even if he's just playing himself. Kind of the same way Tom Hanks is. And I thought like all of the Ford executives, even though there was some humor to be mined from them, they should have just been cut from the movie. Their plot line just did nothing for me at all.
Are you talking about like the Josh Lucas thing where he's like we can't
all of
have
them,
this guy.
all
I don't
of them.
like him.
Josh Lucas, John Bernthal, Tracy Letts, just get rid of them. We don't need them. We don't need the part where they go to Ferrari and be like, and that whole thing with Fiat. I don't care about that. Like, we could have just had John Bernthal show up in Carroll Shelby's office and be like, hey, you want to build a race car? And that would have been fine. Because the driving and the dynamic between the two leads, that's really the star of the movie. And those are the parts that are really fascinating to me. All of the other stuff around it felt like paint by numbers, how to make drama type of shit. It's like, well, we need more drama. What do? Let's insert a executive that our creative heroes have to rail against, and it could be a metaphor for the movie industry or some shit. That just felt very. I don't. That just felt so paint by numbers. I would have liked it. The movie's 2.5 hours. Like I said, I would have liked it a little more if it was maybe 2 hours, less Ford executives, less kind of extraneous plot drama concoctions, and more just racing. Because the racing is fun, it's interesting, it's dynamic, and there's already like so much tension and conflict and drama to be mined from that. You don't need to add it with these sort of tertiary, like stock type characters and their foibles.
Mike?
Just going off of that, I actually really like the executives. I thought it was a good juxtaposition against Carroll Shelby. Like, he's a man's man. Like, you want something done, you do it yourself. You tell the person you need to do the work, and that should be that. One of my favorite scenes was when he was waiting in the lobby at Ford Motors, and he watched a red envelope pass 4 hands just in the time it took to get to the executive, and I thought that was great. And he brought it up, and he's like, this shouldn't happen. Like, if you want something done, one man. That's all you need. And he not only proved that, but he made it a point to tell everyone in that room that you guys are unnecessary. And it was the best. It was my favorite part of the film.
I mean, my favorite part was when he takes Henry Ford II and he's driving the car and they've got Josh Lucas in the office. That's my favorite part. But yeah, the clear use of like visual metaphor to show like this is how company communication breaks down.
It's just like, if you take away all this gunk, we can win this no problem.
It's interesting because the way a lot of stuff like that in movies reads to me is commentary on making movies. For whatever reason, like it feels like, this movie's a metaphor where James Mangold is Carroll Shelby and all the people at, was this like Warner Brothers or something?
Give me a second and I'll find out.
Whatever studio, they're like, the Tracy Lettses and the Josh Lucases of the world. And it's about like the creative types who get their hands dirty and actually make the damn thing versus the suits who just have money in their pockets and try to sell stuff and get their grubby little hands all over everything. That's how it always reads to me, which is weird because this is like a very studio-ish movie.
It was 20th Century Fox, so we're talking about a Disney movie. So it's
God.
It's even more apropos.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Disney loves that stuff, though. They like to point out their own hypocrisy as if it somehow absolves them of all their misdeeds.
Yep.
But, that's something for another time.
The difference between Disney, the company, and Disney, the brand. The brand, we love it that it's creator-focused. The company, we're going to keep down the creators to make sure it's on brand.
Yep.
But it's interesting that it's a 20th Century Fox movie commenting on it. It feels like the sting is a little bit harsher there. I'm trying to think where to go on it, but the reason I like all of the exec stuff is because, like Mike said, you'd have to have something to juxtapose the creators on, because like there are stakes in so far as like, hey, we want to beat Ferrari, but Ferrari's kind of like this mountain that you need. I guess they felt like they needed additional hurdles to get over, and so they kind of needed the face of the corporation that's keeping the little man down.
Yeah, well, from the perspective of classical movie making formula, yeah, you need those guys. You got to have your A plot, but you have to have a B plot. That's what I said. That's what I meant when I said like it felt like those felt like paint by numbers editions.
Yeah.
They felt like they were in there because the people who made this movie felt like they had to be in there, not because they wanted it to be or for artistic reasons, but more for like, well, other movies have this kind of stuff too, so we should probably have it. Well,
and I mean, to go against that, the fact that like you have the spoilers, tragic story of what's Christian Bale? Ken Miles, in the fact that it's like he was the best driver, but because he had one bad interaction with this guy, well, he can't race Le Mans, and then it makes Ford look like an idiot. So then they're like, okay, good. Going into the second half of the second act, like, we can do things our way. And it's like, okay, sure, yeah, you can do things your way. But then Ken Miles gets screwed over again. And that's an important point because it builds up that moment at the end of the movie when it's like, yeah, we're going to get Le Mans again and you're going to win it all for us because you made the perfect lap and you're going to do it over and over. Oh, no, he's dead. Like, it makes it more tragic that you have all of this buildup with these Ford execs. So to me, it strengthens the movie. But in a movie that is 2.5 hours long, if you're looking to cut somewhere, you probably could truncate the Ferrari meeting to be like a flashback sequence where he's like describing everything that happened instead of showing it in like real time.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
But also it also paints Enzo Ferrari not quite as like the bad guy, because the bad guy becomes Josh Lucas. Enzo Ferrari is now just another artist. So you've got the two artists facing off against each other, and then the giant corporation that's trying to get into Ferrari's business. And I like the way that Ferrari kind of like outplayed Ford with Fiat. I kind of like that.
Yeah.
Personally.
You know, it's funny. Other than American Psycho, which Josh Lucas is very, very briefly in, I have managed to never see any movie or TV show with Josh Lucas. Like, I had no idea who he was watching Ford v Ferrari. I thought he was... For real, I had no idea who he was. I thought he was there because he kind of looks like Michael Sheen, and it's like we couldn't get Michael Sheen to play this part because he's too expensive. So here's some guy who kind of looks like him.
The Kmart special of Michael Sheen. He's like,
yeah.
I like Josh Lucas. He's fine, but he is definitely like character actor material. That's like we need.
Well, and I didn't recognize him in American Psycho until I rewatched it, and I'm like, oh, it's that guy.
It's Ford v Ferrari guy. He's playing another asshole business exec.
Yeah, except he's only in American Psycho for like 5 minutes.
Yep. Yeah. Well, he doesn't generally play assholes either. Like it was kind of fun to watch him play the bad guy, personally.
See, I wouldn't have known.
Yeah.
See, I know Josh Lucas is playing assholes because the last time I saw him was in Eric Bana's Hulk.
Oh shit, he was in that?
Yeah, he was like the villain, dude.
So like he was in Glory Road playing the coach, and then he was in like I just know I've seen like a handful of things in it where he's always playing the same Southern guy. He was in Secondhand Lions, I think, as the older Haley Joel Osment. So like he's not gonna like break through the glass ceiling and like become like an A-list star. You can kind of tell, but he's solid. You know, you don't want him starring in a movie, but you know he's a good supporting character. The Josh Lucas effect. I agree. I also like the actors. Again, it still feels I love Christian Bale, but and he may get the nod. Oh, that's what I want to talk about. I'm going to switch gears. Do you think the actors are going to be nominated for Oscars for this movie?
Bale,
yeah,
potentially.
Bale,
probably it.
Yeah,
yeah, I think so. I mean, I think his wife, the lady who plays his wife, could get a nomination if.
Really?
Well, just because the Academy tends to make stupid decisions. You know, like there's plenty of great female actors who did great performances this year, but they may just like somehow glom onto this one because, I don't know, maybe because this is the only movie they saw all year. Well, it's like Toni Collette was it last year or the year before with Hereditary?
Yeah.
Who just completely ignored, like, best performance of the year, nothing. No buzz, no awards, nothing. Same thing, like, it's probably going to happen this year with, what's-her-face, who was in Us, Lupita Nyong'o.
Yeah.
Everyone, I think, has already forgotten about Us as a movie, and she will get nothing, even though she was great in that movie. So
I look at the movies that are coming out, and I'm just like, who are you going to nominate for Best Actor? You know what I mean? Like, and Ford v Ferrari, it's like...
excuse me, Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson, obviously.
Right. Yeah, except we have the problem with that movie that we have with, like, Us. Like, oh, that's great. Who's going to watch it?
But it came out more recently.
That's
true. Came out in, like, February.
That's true. But, like, and like, Hereditary
A24 is smart, I think. They should be pushing for awards for that. Especially because it won the, like, the out of competition prize at Cannes, you know, like there's the films that are in competition for the Golden Palm, and then there's everything else, which is the bulk of their programming. And of that everything else, The Lighthouse was like the best movie.
Yeah, but I mean, they're gonna probably run like Dafoe as supporting and Pattinson as best actor. But I mean, like outside of that, and you've got like The Irishman, that's probably gonna get, you know, deserve it or not, that's probably gonna get some noms. But like, I don't know, I look through the year and I'm like what kind of actors are we going to get? And I think Christian Bale's kind of the easy nominee, even though I feel like he does more scenery chewing than acting most of the time. Like, he walks around with his mouth open, and then he over-enunciates every word. And
but Christian Bale always walks around with his mouth open.
He does. That's why it's funny in Batman when his mouth's open, and people are like, maybe he's having a hard time breathing. Nope, that's just Christian Bale being Christian Bale. He cannot. He's got the Bryan Cranston issue where he just can't close his mouth.
Well, I think Christian Bale breathes. I think he is a mouth breather.
Damn. But like, I mean, I think Christian Bale will probably get it. I'm curious to see if this actually gets nominated for Best Picture, because I mean, it's in my top 10 of the year. Like, I know it seems like I'm kind of being low on it because I'm like, yeah, it's a really high witness, but like, just because it doesn't have that extra something doesn't mean it's one of the best movies I've seen this year in kind of like what has been sort of an okay year.
It's been a lesser year.
Yeah.
I mean, Mike, you are the actor here. What did you think of the performances and, I guess, whatever acting arms race may be going on?
Well, Christian Bale did an amazing job, to be honest. Like, he was probably the most high caliber actor in the film, in my opinion, because he went so far with it. I did like Matt Damon's Carol Shelby, and together they were just gelling the entire film.
Yeah.
But Bale was definitely the prominent force in the film.
Yeah, I would agree that like the chemistry between the two was really good. And that's one thing that like Matt Damon's really good with. I do agree that Matt Damon is kind of like dialing it in, but I felt like this was a role that he kind of got to dug his teeth into a lot more. Like I mean, it might just be Matt Damon playing a guy who likes to race cars from the Midwest living in Los Angeles. But like I felt like he kind of took more ownership of the role than he had in, say, Suburbicon.
Okay.
So
You were speaking as the only person in the world who's seen Suburbicon.
Yeah, me and like George Clooney, who like watched it over and over, and he's like, "Can I make it better somehow?" But like, what has Matt Damon been in recently?
Matt Damon. I don't know.
Like, I feel like his stock is way down. Like, I'll still go and see a movie that he's in if you can tell me a movie that he's in.
He was in Jason Bourne or whatever when they do like the reboot of a beloved franchise where it's just the name of the main character.
Jason Bourne.
Jesus Christ, it's Jason Bourne. He was in that.
Yeah.
Which looked fucking terrible. I saw a bit of some. I guess so. Like, I saw bits and pieces of it, and per Paul Greengrass's usual MO, I could not tell what was going on visually at all at any point in time.
I can't believe you watched it.
Well, it was on TV when I was at my parents' house, so it just happened that way. It was on a screen in a room that I also happened to be in.
He made a cameo appearance in Unsane and a cameo appearance in Deadpool 2. And I feel like a lot of the people who made cameo appearances in Deadpool 2 got hoodwinked into it because they were expecting, like, Ryan Reynolds was like, "Hey, make a cameo in my movie," and they're like, "I enjoyed the first Deadpool," and they expected like, "Oh, maybe Tim Miller's back to direct." No, it's David Leitch. Okay.
Wait, when did Matt Damon show up in Deadpool 2?
According to Matt Damon filmography on Wikipedia, he was Redneck #1, cameo credited as Dickie Greenleaf.
Huh. I mean, there's the Brad Pitt cameo, which everyone remembers.
Yep.
He also had a cameo in Thor Ragnarok.
Yes.
So I guess those two cameos have been his entire filmography for the past 3 years.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, Matt Damon hasn't really sunk his teeth into anything because his cameo in Thor Ragnarok was like, it was literally a cameo. It was not acted very well. It was kind of corny. Like, it was like, hey,
well, that's
guys.
a lot of Thor Ragnarok. It's it's a lot of, hey, look at this thing.
Yeah,
and then you go like, oh, it's that thing.
Yeah. Although Clancy Brown as the voice of Surtur was a good choice.
Clancy Brown as the voice of anyone scary is a good choice.
Yeah. Well, in The Crown, he also plays as Lyndon Baines Johnson, so it's great.
Whoa, that is awesome.
Yeah, he's awesome.
You know, if DC had any idea what they were doing, they would get rid of Jesse Eisenberg, just have Clancy Brown shave his head and play Lex Luthor.
At any age. He's awesome at anything. That's one of the reasons Highlander's good. Clancy Brown is that guy. So, returning to Ford v Ferrari. This is a James Mangold film. Mm-hmm. What are your respective histories with James Mangold?
Mike?
I loved his film Logan.
Do you know
it was amazing.
Have you watched anything else that he's done?
Yes, actually. Pulled up some films.
There's The Wolverine.
Yep. Walk the Line.
Walk the Line, yep.
Walk the Line. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. It was a fantastic film. Yeah.
Joaquin Phoenix.
My boy.
So, what do you? Mike, is Walk the Line probably your favorite James Mangold film?
Logan comes at a very close second.
Okay.
You mean Kate and Leopold isn't up there?
I don't think I saw that one.
It's okay. No one should see that one. It's fine. No one should ever
Nah,
see
bro. We all about Girl Interrupted
that.
on this show.
Excellent pull, sir.
I mean, the thing about James Mangold is, like, I'm trying to think, like, does he have a style, and what is it, and is it good? Like, how does Night and Day fit in with the Wolverine and Walk the Line?
An untitled Boba Fett movie that got canceled. We should not forget.
Yep.
Well, so my thing about James Mangold is he is fascinating to listen to talk about his movies. But he is also very much a studio director.
Yep.
And he, like I said before, I feel like in most of his movies, he goes about 90% of the way there and kind of fumbles the ball into the end zone for the last 10%, for lack of not mixing my metaphors. He runs the ball, he takes the ball at the 1 yard line, runs it, and then kind of fumbles it into the end zone. And sometimes it goes out of bounds before it hits the end zone, and sometimes it goes into the end zone and you get the ending of the Wolverine. So that's kind of where I stand. Because I really like 3:10 to Yuma, but I will also say that it kind of peters out in the end for me. I really enjoy Logan, but I am not as high on Logan as it seems everyone else in the world is. And I really like this movie, but it still ends up feeling a little bit like it hits all of the basics without bringing anything like incredibly new to the genre. But I still generally like what he does. And he's like super solid as a director. He's like a giant concrete brick. He's just really solid. That's where I stand on James Mangold anyway. What about you, Gabe?
Well, I mean, you said a lot of things that I didn't want to say last time, again, because I didn't want to shoot down Ford v. Ferrari before you'd already seen it. You know, it's like, James Mangold is a good director. He makes good movies, but all his movies are studio movies. He is a studio guy. You can see the hand of cards he's playing with from the beginning, so there's no real surprises in anything I've seen of his. And I've only seen Ford v. Ferrari, Logan, The Wolverine, and Walk the Line. I have not seen Night and Day.
I have.
I'm sorry. I have not seen 3:10 to Yuma, even though I wanted to when it came out. And I guess the reason I didn't see it is because I was 12. There's no way they would have let me into the theater. And I have not seen, like Girl Interrupted. But yeah, it's just all of his movies he's extremely competent. Like, he's very visually fluent, He like I said, the racing sequences in Ford v Ferrari are awesome. They're really just thrilling and entertaining, intense, and they have their own. He does a great job of it's like that Indiana Jones or platformer type of storytelling where it's like there's this big extended drive, and within the drive there's all these little problems that they have to overcome that lead to bigger problems that they have to overcome, and all of that is executed so well. And that's extremely difficult to do. I mean, you have to be a top-level filmmaker to get that right. But there's nothing about Ford v Ferrari really surprised me except for Ken Miles dying. And the only reason that was a surprise is because I didn't know anything about the history behind this movie.
I felt exactly the same, actually.
Yeah, likewise.
Like his death in the movie really got me. No, it didn't really get me, but it got me. It was good. It was heartbreaking. It was sad. It was like this great visceral gut punch where you're like, oh, fuck. It worked really well. Logan, I get that it's a really beloved movie. I didn't think it was anything special. I thought it was, it was entertaining, but it's like there's so many points that, again, felt very paint by numbers. Like, there's that bit where the Tesla trucks are about to run over those people with the horses, and then Logan, Professor X, and the girl have to help them corral the horses. Like, while they're corralling the horses, I'm sitting there in the theater thinking, God, I hope these people don't invite them to their house or something. Because as soon as they do, they're going to die. Because that's what they're there for. They're the nice people who are there to be killed because we need to establish that the bad guy is bad because storytelling formula.
Well, and
blah,
also
blah,
it has
blah.
to establish that, hey, maybe Logan and Professor X and X-21? 23 can be a happy family, a happy murderous family that kills a lot of people, but still a happy family. This is the other side of the coin.
Ugh. Anyway.
But yes.
But you know the entirety of everything that's going to happen in Logan before you see it. If you boil away the details of X-Men from it, it is generic movie the movie. You know? Or at least that's how it felt to me. That said, it's very well made. All the performances are really good. All the little X-Men nods are fun, you know. Same thing with Wolverine. You know, it's not... The Logan's definitely way better than the Wolverine, but the Wolverine's, you know, it's kind of like a fun, dumb action movie. Nothing surprising about it.
Well, the ending... So two quick things. One, Mike really likes Logan. And two...
I'm aware.
and two, the Wolverine it was kind of like fantastic or fanforstic in that the ending was wrestled away from James Mangold, who in his own words said he was doing his own little Ozu film in Japan. So I haven't seen the Wolverine, but I'm always kind of curious to see what happened and where the sort of sharp Dark Phoenix-esque turn happens, where it's all been studio film 101. So the two things.
I don't know. Nothing about what I'd seen of Wolverine strikes me as a Tokyo Story.
As a slow-paced Ozu film.
As a slow-paced slice of life family movie about like grandparents who become alienated from their kids or something.
Again, like I said, James Mangold, fascinating filmmaker to listen to, if not maybe the most accurate.
All right, Mike, what do you love about Logan? Because this is the movie that you and I seem to disagree about the most.
It's all the blood, isn't it?
I mean, it's
all
extremely
the blood
bloody.
And the fox.
And the boobs in the beginning. This is a hard R movie, damn it!
I did like that the film was rated R, and they pulled less punches on this film. But I think what really made me love it so much was that the stakes were so high and they actually followed through.
In what sense?
Like,
go on.
Like, Professor X died. Like, that happened. And then seeing...
He did in X3, though.
That's true. But this one was done so much better.
Agreed.
True.
Like... You had Logan burying him and then him collapsing afterwards out of frustration. It just felt more emotionally charged, and it didn't feel like Wolverine and Friends. It just felt like Wolverine is having a really tough time right now, and he's coming to the end of his life, but at least he can go out somewhat happy. And I really like that.
I will say that Logan as a movie has a lot more fun details in it than any of the X-Men movies, and I think a lot of those it's like we talked about Ford v Ferrari being kind of like generic fare done well. I think a lot of it comes down to details, because Mike, to your credit, it is fun to watch Hugh Jackman put on reading glasses every time he has to read something in Logan. Like, I really enjoy that. It does feel a lot like a strongly personal movie about Wolverine, even if I don't necessarily agree with the type of story they tell. And I like the fact that it was not like a futurist version of the future. It's like, it's the future, but it looks very similar to the way our world looks now.
Yeah.
So I love all the little details in the movie. And it does, as many people have gone on to say, it has one of the best CG head replacements in any movie when young Hugh Jackman walks down the staircase. And it's a complete CG replacement head, and it probably works because he doesn't open his mouth. But anyway, Gabe, go ahead. Do you have anything to say to Mike regarding his point on Logan?
No, I mean, I think I've said my piece on Logan. I
just ripping it.
The thing is, like, when people really like a movie, I'm more hesitant to just tear into it, because I I have the habit to just, like a shark, my eyes roll into my head and I start ranting.
Which I personally love, even if it's a movie I like.
I mean, that it may be entertaining for some, or maybe entertaining for if you're an impartial audience member, but I have had experiences with people where I get very animated and just start spouting off about, how I don't like a particular movie, and they just get really pissed. So I've become more hesitant to just start lighting stuff up as I've gotten older.
I do want to bring back something, Gabe, that we talked about on the last episode. You said that Ford v Ferrari felt too shiny, like it wasn't dirty and grimy enough. Now, again, when I think of the movie, I always think of the boardroom scenes are like really clean and shiny, and Matt Damon's hair is always, perfect in every scene. But when they get down and are like building the car, which again was my favorite part, was when they were building and test driving it, and they brought that old guy in. All of that stuff, I thought that they had sort of like added dirt and grime really well. Like I think when Miles is racing, I think they do a lot of that part really well, and like the pit crew and everything. So if you can, like, what do you mean when you say everything just looks too perfect?
It's like the production design people came in and they put all this dirty makeup on Christian Bale's face and on his hands. The costume people put all this dirt and oil stains on, everyone's clothes. The sets look appropriately real and lived in. And then everything has like this ultra glossy lighting with like ultra glossy, soft, what do you call it? It's like the lighting that, how like in classic Hollywood movies, male actors and female actors were lit differently.
Yeah, it's got soft lighting.
I can't remember what the technical terms are, but the men have very hard shadows, very strong, usually single source lights, and then the women are lit up from all around, and it's very soft and warm and glowy. It feels like this movie was shot the way they used to shoot ladies in those classic Hollywood movies, even though the production design is very realistic and dirty.
Yeah, well, because the movie itself made me feel like everyone was living in the 60s again, and it also had that idea of like, man, there's the 60s. I really don't want to live in the 60s.
Well, the other thing I think is that ultra glossy lighting look and the ultra glossy, bright, overlit sort of J.J. Abrams-y cinematography, that's becoming visual code for this movie takes place in the past. Because we tend to have this idealized image of literally any previous decade. So I think it's like this sort of shiny, fuzzy, soft glow of good memories that seems to be inserted into fucking everything that takes place in the past. Even if, everything else about the movie is, it's like these guys build cars and they're rough and they work in a dirty environment. And even if that's all done well, it still looks like this. Everything has the quality of a glazed donut. Like there's just a glazed donut in a display case where it's just super shiny and there's these really bright lights beaming down on it and reflects a ton of light back at your eyes. It looks weird. It weirds me out.
Yeah. I know that, well, Mike, do you have anything to say on this before I dive in and talk about a little bit of it?
Not really. Like, I definitely agree with Gabe with how we idealize everything from the past, basically. And he just brought up a lot of really good points that I agreed with.
So as to the lighting, I will say one of two things. One, Hollywood lighting is Hollywood lighting. The more money they have that they can throw at it, the more they'll do that. And then also the cameras that we use, or if they're using digital cameras,
they probably are.
Digital cameras generally have a softer look. So you can kind of tell the difference between 35 millimeter and digital because digital has a soft look. The edges are a little bit fuzzier, and there's no real film grain. Also, when we watch movies, they're almost all projected digitally now. And the problem with digital projection is that it projects things softer. So it's kind of a 1-2 punch that's not helping anyone. And then I believe they'll also do kind of like a soft, because I generally like the soft glow look, the kind of like the when you're in the ring wraith world look. The movies where you
that's
kind
a good
of
way
like,
to put it.
you have kind of like a soft glow, or like the soft animated film glow. I really like, which is harder to do in animated film, but also easier. But a lot of the times I think when they're doing the color correction for the movie, they are sort of bumping the exposure up a little bit so they can get those like soft glows and a little bit of overexposure here and there. So
Yeah, Lord of the Rings is an interesting counterpoint because I think Lord of the Rings I think is a lot more avant-garde than people remember.
Agreed.
In terms of how it's constructed visually. But I also think that they use that ultra soft lighting, glowy lighting a lot in those movies, but they use it very strategically, and it's not the look of the entire movie.
Right. Actually, if you're into color theory at all, if you watch the Lord of the Rings movies, it's a great example of that. And especially the extended edition, there's one scene when they're going to Moria that you can tell it was an extended scene that they put in because the shot before it looks like a regular 35 millimeter shot. The shot inside of it looks like the heaviest graded shot you've ever seen, where you can even see this orange mask around Gandalf's face to make sure that his skin color stays put. And then it immediately cuts to another shot where it looks like back to the normal movie. So there's that. And then the other thing was they do a lot of like the overexposed soft glow in Return of the King because they're in Gondor a lot of the time and everything is white. But like if that's the look you're talking about, I actually love that. I love that look.
I like the look,
but it
when
has
it's
to have
used
a reason.
appropriately. Yeah, it's got to have a purpose behind it. It can't be the entire movie just looks like this.
Yeah. Well, I would rather
unless it's like Star Trek. I get why J.J. Abrams uses it for Star Trek because it's the shiny, happy future where all of humanity's problems have been solved, and we have to go. We literally everything is so nice on Earth. We have to go to outer space to find
conflict.
So it makes sense. Like it has a narrative purpose in those movies, but it's just as the default look for a lot of movies these days. I don't really like it.
Yeah. Well, and it's replaced as my dad used to say, the dirty diaper brown of period piece movies. Now they do the soft. You know what I'm talking about.
The 50 Shades of Brown. Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah. I don't have the heart to tell him it's called sepia tone. But as Mike and you said, they now use that as visual shorthand for, hey, we're in the past, instead of just, letting the fact that the cars look like they're out of Grand Prix show that. Actually, which brings me to another question I have. On the list of all-time great racing movies you've seen, where does this stand? How high is this on your list?
Racing specifically, or just car movies in general?
Car movies in general is probably a better call, I think, because, how many racing movies have you guys seen?
This.
Rush.
And Talladega Nights.
Car movies. We'll go car movies. Because I have a bit of a history with racing movies, but only 3 or 4. So car movies in general. Where does this lay?
Mike, are you prepared to answer this question? Because I am not. I need a minute.
It's definitely, as car movies go, it's extremely good. But as racing movies go, I don't know if I would say it's better than, say, Rush with...
good pull.
Yeah, because Rush is a fantastic racing film.
I like this better than Rush. This is probably second on my list. This is probably my second favorite racing movie. I did forget about Rush, though. Rush is high up there.
Yeah, Rush is a fantastic film if you ever get a chance and you haven't seen it.
What do you think Rush does better? I haven't seen Rush, so I don't know anything about it.
Well, Rush is more about
the rivalry.
The rivalry between two racers.
Gabe, do you even know which movie we're talking about?
It's the Ron Howard, Chris Hemsworth, Daniel Bruhl movie.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, about Niki Lauda and some British guy.
And what's her name has an appearance. Natalie Dormer has an appearance in there for 10 seconds as a nurse who gets freaky with Chris Hemsworth, as one does. So you put Rush ahead of this?
Rush ahead of this just because it felt more like we're were frenemies kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And it felt like it was more of like an underdog story in terms of like he almost died and then he's coming back to still race. That's what I liked more about it.
Yeah. And Daniel Bruhl does a good job in that one. That was before Civil War, so I wasn't a fan of his at the time. And then after Civil War, I was like, oh, Daniel Bruhl, I like this guy, the guy from Inglourious Bastards. But he does a really good job in it, and I do like all of like the complete contrasting lifestyles of the two gentlemen in the movie. Mm-hmm. But I think that the execution of Ford v Ferrari for me is better because like I like all of the stuff that the Ford company was doing at the time. And then it would have been nice to have some sort of rivalry, I agree, between like Ferrari and Ford instead of just like, hey, I met you 3 seconds ago, now we're enemies.
Yeah.
You know, I completely forgot Daniel Bruhl was in Inglourious Basterds. Because I always remember him. There's a German movie called Goodbye Lenin. That's for whatever reason that's the movie I know him from. Like anytime I see him, it's like, oh, it's the guy from Goodbye Lenin.
Mike, have you seen Grand Prix, the old 1966 racing movie?
I have not.
Okay.
Is that your number one?
It is my number
racing
one
movie.
Yeah, it's one of those long 3-hour movies with like 5 different storylines consisting of 8 characters that overlap, and there's literally a montage where they do like the 1960s and 70s like impressionistic racing to like really lighthearted music, and but it gets the vote because one of the stories is James Garner is an American racer who gets kicked off of his team. And Toshiro Mifune plays a Japanese car manufacturer who wants to get into the racing scene. And he said, I have built the best car, Pete Aaron. And James Garner, who's Pete Aaron, is like, so why don't you win? He's like, because I don't have a good driver. Our Japanese drivers are not good enough with this car. But you.
So that's the origin of the stereotype?
That's one of them. So again, because it's Toshiro Mifune and it's James Garner and it's a racing movie and it's 3 hours long and there's an intermission and it's got a corny soundtrack and all of the stories come back on themselves. It's really not an amazing movie in the sense of like when you watch Lawrence of Arabia, you're like, oh yeah, this movie earned 3 hours. But you do get the sense of like how grand the Grand Prix is because the movie is so long and it goes to almost all of the races. And it's John Frankenheimer, who's known for doing great chase scenes and great driving scenes. So,
well, the interesting thing is like, Mangold does a great job with the racing scenes. Like I've said that.
Oh yeah, we've said it like 8 times,
30 times in this podcast. But he obviously doesn't do anything new because it seems like John Frankenheimer and George Miller pretty much. Everything new or innovative in terms of filming cars and filming driving and filming racing was created by those two, and everyone else is just kind of copying them at this point.
Except for that opening scene where Matt Damon's on the race course. I think that is something fresh that they did, but then kind of don't really approach again. Well, Mike, do you know who John Frankenheimer is?
No.
He's a really interesting filmmaker. The movie that we recommend you watch of his is called Ronin. Unless
Ronin.
Gabe, unless you want to recommend The French Connection too.
No, I'll stick to recommending Ronin.
In Ronin, you'll see a lot of why he's kind of like known as one of the masters of the chase scene.
Okay.
But he does a lot of like great car. It's really weird. Apparently, if you listen to the commentary, he knows exactly how many cuts are in the entire movie.
Jesus, there's so many cuts in that movie.
I forget. You can find it on the IMDb page. He's like, oh yeah, there's exactly blah 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 amount of cuts in the movie. But he did Ronin. He did Grand Prix. He's known for doing thrillers, and his thrillers tend to have really good car chase scenes. So it's like if you liked the chase scenes in Ford v Ferrari, definitely look up. You can look up Grand Prix.
He also did the original Manchurian Candidate way back in the day.
Yeah, he's a really interesting filmmaker because he also did The Island of Dr. Moreau, I believe. Or is it Mystery Island? The one with Val Kilmer and Marlon Brando and David Thewlis.
Island of Dr. Moreau.
Yep, he did that one. So if you don't know the backstory to that, that's a fascinating movie.
Okay.
Yeah, I haven't seen that many racing movies, so I can't. It's hard to put Ford v Ferrari in that sort of a context. Like, I haven't seen Rush, I haven't seen Grand Prix, I have not seen.
You haven't seen
Le Mans.
Driven?
No.
Don't. I enjoyed Driven. From a screenplay point of view, it's pretty good, but you don't need to see it.
But in terms of car movies, it's a bigger bucket to pull from, and Ford v Ferrari does not stack up as well, just because this is a bigger pool. I like all the Mad Max movies more. I like Ronin more. It's tough.
Yeah, you're throwing it with a lot of good car movies.
Yeah.
Well, especially because it's like a lot of car-based action movies.
I guess I didn't consider Mad Max Fury Road in there, but it's true. I mean, there's not a lot of like trucker movies out there, so I guess that would have to be in there. But like, even so, like, Mad Max aside, a lot of the movies that go into the technical side of cars, I would still put Ford v Ferrari pretty high, because they kind of get into a lot of the technical aspects, which I wish they kind of did more of that. Kind of like, we're going to cement our movie as the technical car movie, you know?
Yeah. So what's better, Ford v Ferrari or Fast Five?
Don't you mean Hobbs and Shaw?
Hobbs and Shaw, I don't think qualifies as a car movie.
What? You don't think it does?
It's weird. I don't think Hobbs and Shaw qualifies as a car movie, even though Fast and Furious 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and maybe 7 do.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and half of 7. Yeah, they did kind of start going away from it, but they do have plenty of scenes in an auto body shop. Well, okay, and Drive definitely counts as a car movie, right?
Oh yeah. And Drive is perfect in every way.
Yeah,
Ford v Ferrari obviously does not look as nice standing right next to it.
It doesn't, but I will say the car stuff in Ford v Ferrari I like better than the car stuff in Drive. I know it may be sacrilegious, but because a lot of the car stuff in Drive kind of goes away halfway through.
Yeah, well, Drive is not as nearly focused on cars as Cars, but Cars is like horses almost.
Yeah, the getaway vehicle. Well,
well, it's like in a medieval fantasy, it's right. The driver is the knight, the car is his horse, and Irene is the princess. Albert Brooks is a fire-breathing dragon.
Since we're talking about car movies, what did you guys think of Baby Driver?
I loved it.
I forgot that movie existed.
I was about to bring it up.
Baby Driver is really good. I like it.
Says the guy who forgot that it existed. I feel like I'm the only person on the planet
I forget nice things all the time.
I feel like the only person on the planet that feels like Baby Driver is very overrated.
I could see that.
I can see that. Yeah, I don't think you're the only person who feels that way. I definitely think there was a lot more hype around the movie when it came out than there is,
2 years
now. I don't think it lived up to, like, oh my god, Baby Driver will change action movies forever.
Yeah.
It's a really good movie. I liked it a lot.
It is. My thing is, like, as each chase scene gets worse to, like, the point where your climactic car chase is just kind of like not as good as the first car chase, which had all the stunts. But when I was rewatching Drive, I was thinking of Baby Driver and how similar the two movies were. But I would rather watch Drive than Baby Driver because, like, Drive is just so concise and tight, whereas Baby Driver kind of spirals off the handles plot-wise a little bit. There's like, it's, he's a driver, but he has like the worst case of tinnitus that you've ever heard, so he has to listen to music the whole time. But at the same time, he's got like this uncle who's also deaf and he has got to protect. And then he's in love with Lily James, who's a bar waitress. And then John Hamm and his wife. And Jamie Foxx is in the movie. And Jamie Foxx is an asshole. And if Jamie Foxx just did the right thing, none of this would ever happen. But then, then like, hey, Kevin Spacey's in the movie and he's not being a pedophile yet. So there's like a lot of weird... There's like a lot of weird elements in Baby Driver that kind of like are not nearly as clean as Drive, which you can almost make a direct line to Drive between Baby Driver and Drive. So anyway, just food for thought, considering they came out in the same decade.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, movies that came out in the same decade, Jesus, that's a wide net.
Well, movies about like nameless drivers who fall in love with women that they ultimately have to protect, and a lot of violence ensues.
Okay, that's a better. I can work with that.
Do you guys have any more thoughts? Yo, go ahead.
Yeah, and Drive has the elevator scene, which no other movie has.
Oh, yes, the elevator scene. Such a great scene.
I love that part so much.
Yeah, it's such great. I mean, they also have like when Christina Hendricks' head blows off like that. to put it lightly.
It's so brutal.
But that whole part is great too. Like when they're in the hotel room and poor Oscar Isaacs before he became a star, playing just like another like Latino gangster.
Very cookie cutter character.
Do you guys have anything else to talk about on Ford v Ferrari?
Not really.
Besides the fact that I find it hilarious how most of Carroll Shelby's stress came from trying to tell Ken Miles how Ford gave him the shaft again.
I'll take care of Miles. You just tell me, Ford. I'll take care of Miles. Oh God, bring on the Maylocks. That's true. Like Matt Damon, the whole like conflict in Matt Damon is just telling Christian Bale bad news and hoping he doesn't flip out like Terminator Salvation.
Yeah.
Well, good for you. I've never seen anything so fucking unprofessional. You don't want me to finish. You want me to finish in line with all these people? Well, good for you.
Oh no.
That's fascinating. I had never really thought of that. That all of the conflict between Matt Damon and Christian Bale just comes from Matt Damon relaying news from Ford
Yep.
to Christian Bale. It's literally just shoot the messenger.
Or like replacing the whole brake system. I liked that scene a lot when they're like, "Can we do that?
Yeah.
It's a part. You can replace parts." Like, I like loopholes. So
And then when the guy tried to throw the rule book at him, and he said the exact same thing as Christian Bale said. He's like, I got this.
That's because he wasn't throwing a wrench. That's why. It's the difference. Man, it got me a little bit more interested in stock car racing because I found it fascinating that they're just like, oh, souped up stock cars. Like I'd never had any interest in NASCAR before. I still don't really. Let's be honest.
No. Well, they repeatedly shit on NASCAR too.
They do. Well, what
this isn't just making left turns over and over.
Is Le Mans technically like a stock car race?
No, it's Formula One.
It is. Oh, shows you how much I know about racing. My qualifications for talking about this movie, not very existent.
I'm not big into racing or cars that much either, so yeah, I'm not the most qualified to be talking about it on like, well, is this an accurate depiction of whatever? I have no clue.
Close enough. Okay, fun fact. I know this is coming out of left field. Fun fact. James Mangold was one of the writers of Oliver and Company back in 1988.
Wait, is that the animated movie about the cats?
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Huh.
So he's kind of one of those guys who's had his hand in a lot of weird things over the years. He did his indie film and he's basically been a studio guy since then. But at the same time, like, he's had his hand in Disney animated films. He's done superhero movies. He's done spy movies. He likes Westerns. He's done racing movies. He's a really interesting filmmaker. And kind of like, he's more interesting than any one individual movie would belie.
I guess so, because it sounds like you've heard a lot of interviews with him.
I've only heard the DGA interview he did with for Logan, but it's really interesting. I'd be interested to hear what he talks about on Ford v Ferrari too. Christian Bale.
Did he not have a DGA interview? I
haven't checked. If he did, I haven't heard it yet. He probably did because they had the Knives Out interview before Knives Out came out, and they had the Irishman interview come out way before the movie was released in theaters at all. So they're
okay.
Yeah. Anything else, you guys?
Nah.
You think one day we'll get better at wrapping up our podcast?
No. Start strong, it fizzles out, and then we're like, wow,
Did we come to the conclusion? Is this close enough? Will this work? Mike,
Nah, I
We
mean,
should have an outro to play us out.
Mike's just like, get this done. Did you have any other last comments, Mike, as our first guest star?
I mean, I'm just happy to be here, guys. Like, this is awesome.
We hope you had a good time, even though we talked over you most of the time.
It's fine. I was like trying to think of what to say the entire time.
We're the Fox News of podcasts. We just talk over you. I'm trying to come up with my next point, guys. Wait, what? What's going on? Where are you guys now?
why do you like Logan so much? Do you hate America?
Shit, this escalated quickly.
What's going on? What happened? Why?
Wait, I thought we were talking about cars or something.
Yeah, what happened to Ford v Ferrari? We were talking about making ham sandwiches and drinking Coke. I love the way I can't remember it now, but I do enjoy the way that Christian Bale would always Pop Fizz. You'd call it Pop Fizz, right? The soda. Fizzy Pop. Great little touch. Like I said, the devil's in the details, and James Mangold has great details in his movies.
Fizzy Pop.
That's
like how in
Stop calling me a limey, which is another good movie.
It's like how in Don't Mess with the Zohan, there's that Israeli soda called Fizzy Bubulech. The first thing that popped into my head when you said Fizzy Pop. And he's like, and he also says, "Can I have a Fizzy Pop?" And then it's like Coca-Cola with the label out, I thought Fizzy Pop was like an actual drink, but no, it's just soda.
I was gonna say, I'm pretty sure it's just slang for soda.
I guess. It's like two different slangs for soda smashed together.
The two Midwestern slangs. Give me my fizzy. Give me my pop.
My pop.
My pop. In the bags. We'll get into Midwestern accents later on, but maybe not in this episode. Well, anyone else have anything to add? Should I wrap this bad boy up?
Yeah, Ford v Ferrari, good movie. Check it out.
Witness, definitely one of the best movies of the year.
Would see again.
I'd totally see it again.
I would watch the racing scenes again if it was ever on TV.
With that asterisk, my name is Matthew.
I'm Gabe.
I'm Mike.
And you've just gone under the wheels. Three, 2, 1,
go.
Welcome to Under the Wheels. My name is Matthew.
I'm Gabe.
And today we
I'm
have
Mike.
a special guest. We're going to do this over again. I'll introduce you, Mike. I should have gone over that with you. All right, ready? 3, 2, 1, Gabe.
Go.
I want you off the fucking set, you prick! No, don't just be sorry. Think for one fucking second. Are you professional or not?
Yes, I am.
Do I fucking walk around and rip that? No, shut the fuck up, Bruce. Do I want? No! No! Don't shut me up. Why the fuck are you walking right through? Da-da-da-da like this in the background. What the fuck is it with you? What don't you fucking understand? You got any fucking idea about, hey, it's fucking distracting having somebody walking up behind Bryce in the middle of the fucking scene? Give me a fucking answer. Oh, good for you. And how was it? I hope it was fucking good because it's useless now, isn't it? Fuck's sake, man, you're amateur. Stay off the fucking set, man. For fuck's sake.